Well, good morning, everyone. I would like to join other colleagues in thanking the Navy League of Canada and the Royal Canadian Navy, and especially also the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies for having me here, giving me such a good chance to meet with a lot of old friends and making connection to people working in this field. And well, actually, I'm wearing three hats in this special occasion. I'm a scholar with a China-based think tank specialized on South China Sea studies. I'm also a research fellow with the Canadian University in Alberta. I'm also an alumni of APCSS. So no matter which hat I'm wearing today, I make sure I'm going to speak on my personal capacity as independent academia. So I was invited to asked by the chair to talk about the Chinese perspective on how international law, especially the 1982 Law of Sea Convention, function or help in managing the maritime dispute in the South China Sea. So in order to do that, I have to apologize, I can't barely read that screen, I have to look back. So in order to do that, I'm going to pose a few questions for discussion. And the first will be, does international law, especially does the Law of Sea Convention help? And I'm going to look at the state practices of international law by the South China Sea claimant states. And the question will be, try to do a summary of the practice of dispute management settlement in this region, and to answer the question, which approach in managing potential maritime dispute works in reality? And the third question will be, has China ever changed its strategy of maritime dispute management by looking at China's public relations campaign and management throughout these years? And my last question will try to discuss whether China is a follower of international norms, given the discussion about the reason why China refused to be a part of the arbitration procedure initiated by the Philippines. Then I'm going to look at the Chinese approach to international law, including UNCLOS, to answer these questions. So before I answer those questions, just to provide you a graph shows that how the South China Sea dispute actually being categorized. And let's start from the core, where we have this island region, we have the overlapping claims of the sovereignty of the particular feature, especially in the Spratlys, and that would be related to the island regimes, which feature actually enjoys the legal state of island, or they are simply a rock. And then will also be related to the maritime delimitation arising for the legal status of those features in the Spratlys. And in the middle circle, we'll see the overlapping conflict or overlapping interests. On the one hand, we have historical concepts which existed before the 1982 Convention, and we also have new maritime regimes from the 1982 Law of Sea Convention. And on the external circle, we have other issues which I think a lot of the user states, including Canada, US, Japan, will be in this picture. And then we're looking at resource management, including living and non-living resources. And we have also this marine environment protection issues and certain freedom navigation, which I believe a lot of people in this room will have a deeper understanding on that concept than me. And this slide shows actually what is the nature of the escalation of the South China Sea dispute since 2009. And if we look at among the claimant states, on the one hand, the old stories continues. We have still an issue which hasn't been addressed, including the island regime, the maritime delimitation, and also the overlapping competition of historical and modern claims. And also new dimension existed after May 2009, when these countries submitted to the Commission of the Limits of Continental Shelf. And then follow up with a lot of national legislation by individual countries to consolidate the claims in the South China Sea, and certainly the public relations campaign, all countries are involved actually. And then if we look at external players, we can actually consider their interest in the South China Sea, firstly from the geopolitical calculations, and also from the concept of free navigation, and certainly, and they are also very interested in the different approach that the different countries might be interested in, whether this issue will be an international issue or regional issue, and whether this dispute should be addressed through a bilateral approach. And then the first question, does international, especially off-sea, help at all? I'm going to show you a very quickly show a couple of slides which shows the status of convention which the relevant states already ratify or be a party of it. And the first slide shows you the status of the convention in the South China Sea. So briefly, all the claimant states, well, excluding Taiwan as a party, are actually ratified at the Lower Sea Convention. And the second slide shows you the convention on the marine pollution prevention in the South China Sea, very comprehensive, a lot of it. And the next slide shows you the status of convention on maritime safety and security in the South China Sea. And then this one actually shows you the state of convention on environment protection in the South China Sea. And the last one will be the fishery agreement in the South China Sea. So if we can read those graphs, probably will come to an initial conclusion that we don't actually lack international law, international norms in this region. And certainly a lot of these claimant states have also national legislation in accordance with all these international conventions in different fields. But actually, if we come back to the first slide I'll show you, the core issue is still the sovereignty issue, which cannot be addressed by the 1982 Convention, and which has to need to refer back to the customary international law. And certain maritime delimitation also cannot be addressed properly without addressing the sovereignty issue. So this is the first question that I want to ask. And the second question, what actually works in reality? So there are different approaches used for dispute management in the South China Sea. There are two categories. The first one would be the settlement or management by formal agreement or procedures, which could be done through the negotiation settlement or through the international jurisprudence or through joint development. And the second category will be a managing by promoting the confidence building measures through which we can see examples of regional procedures and also bilateral talks and also multilateral activities. So if you can look at the dispute settlement or management in this region, we can see about more unsettled case than settled case so far. So this diagram or table shows you the individual countries' approach when they are dealing with the dispute management. Let me just pick China, given the time limited. Let me just pick China as one example. So on the negotiation, China has its the first and the only one maritime delimitation with Vietnam in the Gulf of Tonkin back in 2000, and together with the fishery agreement with Vietnam. And jurisprudence, not yet, although China has been sued by the Philippines in a current situation because China official stance is not going to be a party, so there is no practice so far. For the joint development, I have to say, well, there was one going on discussion with Brunei about confidence building regional. China has been a party of the consultation of the DOC and also the Sea Code of Conduct. And China has established Maritime Fund back in 2013. So, and also China is a party of international workshop. This is for a regional approach. For the multilateral, I think China and Vietnam and Philippines back in 2005 to 2008 signed the first seismic survey agreement in the waters around Spratly, but it failed or has been halted due to some domestic problems from certain countries. Bilateral, I think there's always a lot of bilateral negotiation between China and Vietnam, between China and Malaysia and other countries. And so to summarize, and some data actually shows which approach is more popular in the South China Sea. And negotiation certainly tops up according to this data, and then follow with joint development and then jurisprudence. So to summarize this question, I have to say in the South China Sea region since 1969, outstanding achievement has been made in dispute management. We have 12 cases settled out of 28. However, great effort are still needed to manage or resolve the remaining 16 cases. To look at the approach, since 1969, the confidence building measure is mostly promoted in this region, and all the countries are involved in at least one or either a lot of bilateral level discussion. And the most popular approach in resolving this is bilateral negotiation. But also there's a very successful jurisprudence case in the South China Sea, for instance, between Malaysia and Indonesia, and between Malaysia and Singapore as well. So to look at the state by country, China is more active in promoting confidence building than finally resolving a dispute through international jurisprudence. And both Malaysia and Vietnam are relatively active in negotiation with and confidence building measures. And Philippines, I think, it signed its maritime delimitation in May 2014 with Indonesia. So this is the current situation. So my third question, trying to answer, has China ever changed its strategy of maritime dispute settlement? To answer this question, I'm going to direct you to some particular interesting periods. Well, China is always focusing, well, we have a lot of very rich historical evidence, but this presentation, I'm not going to date it back to centuries or hundreds of years of history. Rather, I'm only focused on pre-1970. Why I picked the 1970 as the period I want to share with you is, well, back in, I think in late 1960, there was a report from the United Nations about so-called rich reserve in the South China Sea basin, although at least for the first, the previous panel indicated, probably what is not a lot of oil and gas or even hydrocarbon gas in the center of the South China Sea. Basically, he's talking about sparkly, but actually the 1960 UN report actually has some element to do with the later on occupation by certain countries of particular features in the South China Sea. So before 1970, what China did is announcement of the sovereignty through diplomatic protest or diplomatic notice. And then the second period will be from early 1970 to late 1980. And China will still continue its policy of announcement of sovereignty and resume control of some features in the Paracel and the Spratleys. Since 1999, given the hot situation in the South China Sea, I think Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping proposed the joint development proposal to sharpen the dispute and promoting joint development or joint cooperation in the disputed areas. And this proposal has not been very well implemented because given a lot of difficulty in identifying location where it's actually the disputed area. And from 2002, 2000 the year when China and ASEAN member states signed the Declaration of Conduct in the South China Sea. Between the year of 2002 until 2009, and actually we see China is becoming more and more engaged from a bilateral approach to a multilateral interaction with ASEAN member states. So China has been more open to a multilateral forum. And then post-2009, I would rather, it might be very debatable what is actually Chinese policy, whether you call it being assertive or being aggressive. For I speak from a Chinese perspective and look at all these incidents, and I would rather argue that actually taking a passive response in the South China Sea dispute since 2009. So to summarize all the policy from before 1970 to now, I would rather argue that, well, the policy has been evolved given the different geopolitical situation, but there's some 13 elements remain unchanged, which is peace and stability is still the main goal of Chinese policy, maritime policy, and then is still preferred for negotiation among the claimant states, whether it's bilateral or multilateral. At least the countries are directly involved, should be involved in the negotiation table. My last question will be, is China a follower of international norms? I'm not going to spend a lot of time arguing that China is not a part of the system where the Western international law has been formalized. I would rather pick up one example to identify China's attitude towards international law, referring to the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. Well, for China's sovereignty refers to independence, internal powers of independence, such as legislation, establishment of national system, external power, freedom to deal with external affairs. And then the strict adherence to the principle of inviolability of sovereignty has become a distinctive feature from policy of the PRC, and is treated as the base of international relations and a cornerstone cornerstone of the whole system, international law. So that is why, although probably people will argue there is no such rich resource in the South China Sea, and those features are simply rocks, but for China, it's a symbol of national sovereignty or territorial integrity and sovereignty issue. That is how China is so consistent on the sovereignty claims in the spot-list. And the second point is the participation in UNCLOS process. I would rather argue that China has been very active throughout all these years of UNCLOS process. It's joined the other developing countries in promoting the concept of EEZ. And also China has been has a lot of very comprehensive maritime legislation review, including the baseline system, like 1992 territorial sea law, and also the EEZ and colonial law in 1998. And the last point is the practice of dispute settlement. And people will argue that China does not like any of the international litigation arbitration, but I think I would take a second thought and come to that conclusion. If you look at the WTO dispute mechanism system, China has been very frequently facilitate that mechanisms. But when it comes to the South China Sea, when more than one country are involved, when the territorial dispute are involved, and when the maritime delimitation are involved, I think it would be very rational for the Chinese leadership to take a second thought in coming to whether we should come to the international delegation, whether give the right to a third-party, compulsory third-party mechanisms to deal with the issues. Just in my last slide to summarize. So the international regional legal framework is very comprehensive in the South China Sea, and also there's national legislation ongoing among all these claimants today, which serve as a consolidation of maritime claims. And there are various means of dispute settlement management. And Chinese policy in the South China Sea has been involved but remain unchanged in principle. So if we look at the way forward, I think we need more regional efforts, more practical cooperation, but we don't need any of the nationalist propaganda, and we need less public relations campaign. With that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for your patience.